Hey guys, and welcome back to the Movie-Club Emporium. And this is a special review because if you were smart and talented and handsome, and you joined us over at our Twitch channel last night, then you got to see this review early because we were talking about the new Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan collaboration, Sinners. And it's a special one because Nick gets to be here too. And so this is going to be a lot of fun. Usually I would start these off, but I'm going to go ahead and let Nick start off this time, and he can give you his initial thoughts first, and then I'll jump in, and then we'll take it from there. But Nick, what are your initial thoughts of Sinners?
Well, Sinners is a movie that's kind of taken the country by storm. It has gotten some extremely positive reviews, and it's been met with a pretty good bit of success too. Uh, Sinners takes place in 1932 down in the Mississippi Delta, and follows around the two main characters being the Smokestack twins, both played very well by Michael B. Jordan. Uh, they're back in their they're back home from being involved in criminal endeavors in Chicago, and they have a big plan to fund a juke joint with some money that was gained through very unsavory means. So they get a cousin of theirs who is an extremely talented blues singer and guitarist, and kind of get together this dream team of people for music and food and security and whatnot to turn this old sawmill into this hop and juke joint for all these poor sharecroppers in the Delta. And as you're following them around, as they're kind of preparing for this, these guys have been out of town for 7 years, so they are reconnecting with old flames and meeting up with old people, and you know, preparing for this big night of festivities. And you could see that preparation for it, and then you get to see the what goes on at this juke joint when it becomes under siege from vampires, and all that ensues after that. Uh, this is one of the more difficult movies I've had to review because let me tell you, this movie does a lot right while managing, I think, to fall on his face in other ways. Firstly, the one thing that everybody is raving about with this movie is the music and the sound, which is absolutely unreal. You get so much in the way of beautiful music from that era, especially from blues. The guy who plays their cousin, if that's him really singing, man, that guy's like he's got one of those soulful voices that just hits you to your core. And you get Irish folk music at times, and you get just all these beautiful songs, very very much from the era. And I'm no expert. I'm not even a particularly big fan, but man, I absolutely loved the music in this movie. Uh, you also get a lot of really great acting. I love Michael B. Jordan. He's quite compelling and suave as the Smokestack twins, and they have a great cast of supporting characters in there who are really appealing. Especially, said I'm terrible with names, so I'm looking them up. The guy who plays their cousin, I
Mm-hmm.
don't think he's been in much. Plays Sammy Moore. They call him Preacher Voice. Played by Miles Catton. Just he's about 20 years old now. Man, that dude has a future ahead of him. He steals a lot of scenes in this movie, in my opinion. He's this kind of sheltered preacher son who really wants to be a blues musician, and is, you know, goes from working the fields to playing in this juke joint, much to the disapproval of his father, who's a preacher. So you have a really great cast surrounding him, and so I love the look of Southern Gothic horror, of the wooden buildings, of it being so hot you can feel it. things being dusty, of the desperation of the Great Depression. It's like people are poor but still wanting to be entertained and still wanting to have that connection with each other. But I got a feeling while I was watching this movie, this wasn't originally meant to be a vampire movie because it is, I don't know, it's almost a stretch to call it a vampire movie, in my opinion. You are a good ways into the movie before a vampire appears, and the vampire appears out of absolutely nowhere. I'm not going to go too much into spoiling anything. I don't know. It's odd. It's like the original script had nothing to do with vampires. It was kind of a crime blues movie, which to me, that's a very interesting movie. But then we get vampires in it, and it kind of just seems it comes out of left field. I'm kind of rambling on. Why don't you take over for a minute?
So, yeah, so like you said, anytime I see a movie that involves an actor playing twins, maybe it's just in my head. I automatically always compare it to Jeremy Irons in Dead Ringers, because to me that's the perfect example of an actor playing twins in a movie, and this is done flawlessly. He is fantastic as both characters. They're both fully developed people, and you can honestly like turn around years later and be like, "Oh no, like Linda Hamilton has a twin, Michael B. Jordan has a twin," and I'd be like, "No shit, really? Like that? Of course he does, because that's a real person." Um, the supporting cast, I'm a huge fan like of blues music, and you don't get a lot of it down here, surprisingly. There used to be a radio station here locally that every Sunday night did the Sunday Night Blues Cruise, and they would just play old old blues music from like 8 p.m. to like 5 a.m. and I would go to bed with that playing. I love that old sound. Um, but yeah, I agree, because if this movie was about these two brothers and we're opening this juke joint, and then maybe, we found out the Klan's coming at dawn to kill everybody, and so we got to prepare for that. That's a really great movie. But you've promised me vampires, and so I'm waiting for, especially with the way the trailers are cut, which I know in today's day trailers don't mean diddly squat with how, for example, this movie, without going exact spoilers, the end of this movie is in the trailer. And I don't mean the Haley, whatever her name is, reveal. Um, like the actual ending of the ending of everything is in this movie. Or in the trailer.
Yeah.
I think that would have been a great movie. But it's a 2 hour and 17-minute movie, and the vampire fight doesn't happen until there's 16 minutes left. And honestly, I'm sure it was getting a lot of comparison, and I don't want to compare it to this movie. Um, Even though, again, the trailer kind of sells it like it is, should be compared to it. This movie feels like if From Dusk Till Dawn was 2 hours of the opening Michael Parks cash register clerk scene, and then the last 16 minutes was at the titty twister. Like there's so much. It's great acting. There's great character build up. There's great world building. But I felt like Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park. I'm like, there are eventually vampires in this vampire movie. No.
Well, the first appearance of a vampire, he literally comes flying in out of
Yeah.
nowhere. Like he's airborne and flies in and then goes to this house.
Yeah.
There's no segue to it. There's no setup. There's no reference to it anywhere at all. There's no build up to it. It's just like, oh, all of a sudden there's a vampire. There's no hints of like, oh, there's this other supernatural stuff. Nothing. It's you have this really, in my book, compelling story of these brothers, and that you're building up something of their background and their romance life, and some of these building up, at least to an extent, some of these other characters. And you're just thinking, I was like, okay, I know there's vampires. Where's it at? And the vampires showed up, and I was thinking, I wish they wouldn't have, because
Yeah,
I just want to see the very normal story. And I love the idea of the juke joint being besieged by the clan. To
yeah.
me, that's a more interesting. And the vampire shows up out of nowhere, and I was a little worried at that point. And he's being pursued by this group of Native American people who apparently know what he is.
That
It's like,
comes to nothing.
and to me, it's like, man, that's interesting.
Yeah.
We have this group of Native American vampire hunters, and they're after him. You never see them again. Sorry, spoiler, they never ever show up again in the movie. It is one of the many threads of this movie. It's like they pull at it and then completely leave it alone. They'll hint at things and just drop it. It doesn't, as I said, it's they had a movie. I don't know if they were afraid, and I might be wrong about how this all came about. I don't know if they were afraid it would be commercially successful to make a movie about the blues, about organized crime, about the Klan of the Deep South in the 1930s. I don't know why. That sounds compelling as hell to me. And the Dusk Till Dawn comparison has been coming up. It's not a direct
No,
comparison,
no, it's not.
but in Dusk Till Dawn, you have very much a crime movie. This very tense crime movie with these two brothers and this crime spree they're going on without a hint of the supernatural. Then they get to the titty twister. But that movie seemed to do it in a more cohesive way. They also they throw in a lot of characters in the movie that they'll mention something about, and it seems like it's going to go somewhere, but it really doesn't. Like they mentioned twice the woman that Preacher Boy's interested in, who is stunningly gorgeous, and being married. You think, oh, that's going to play in. No, it never comes up. That's things just they'll give you little hints at something, mainly with the extended cast, and then don't really follow up on it. You're thinking, oh, that's interesting. Oh, there's a backstory there.
Yeah.
And no, you don't have to show me the details of every relationship and every backstory. But they present it as something this is going to come into play later, then it doesn't.
Yeah.
And then it drops it. Because it struck me as, okay, we need to shoehorn Vampire Mayhem into this movie.
To me, it felt a lot like all the problems I had with Lovecraft Country. Like, and by that I mean because I watched it back to back with Watchmen, which perfectly blends all the socioeconomic things we want to discuss while perfectly blending it with this sci-fi story, superhero sci-fi story. Ryan Coogler did it himself with Black Panther, but this movie it feels like we are doing all this setup and like I said, between the way that the movie that is made to look to the trailers, to the opening scene of Lovecraft Country where Jackie Robinson is fighting Cthulhu with a baseball bat, and you're like, yeah, let's do this, and then it's just like these weird threads that kind of go anywhere. We are doing a lot of world building with our characters, but they're not given like there's no payoffs for some of those stories. Like the one big guy, who they bring in as like the bouncer for the place. His pregnant wife that comes of nothing. We kind of get the one lady who was kind of into like hoodoo. We get a little bit of with that ridiculous and I know it was a trope before then and a trope after, but the whole like we got to eat garlic to see which one of us is a vampire. I do like the twist that this movie takes with that, but it's the Thing blood test.
It is, and was watching the movie. It's like, oh, it's the thing. It's a blood test on the thing. Oh, only again,
Yeah.
it's a blatant ripoff, but nothing happens. It's just
And if you want to do something like this that is supernatural, surrounding the blue, surrounding this time in the Mississippi Delta, you want to do Southern Gothic. Vampires? I mean, like, why are we not doing Crossroads? You know, deals with the devil, the Black Toms, and stuff like that. That's actually part of that folklore of that time in that area. You know, a young preacher boy who wants to be big, sell, makes a deal with the mysterious man at a fork in the road. There's your, do that as your supernatural element. Um, but the vampire stuff just kind of, it feels like it's done out of necessity, and it might be something too if we're gonna do, like the other stuff with the clan besieging them at dawn. Lean into that with the vampires. I mean, it's like we haven't made vampires villains before, and there's like I said, Blood Creek, where they're of a certain, it's a vampire of a certain group, another group from the 30s that were not into other people. This being YouTube, I'm not gonna say the name, but you know who they are. Um, like do that, but it's just, and they're vampires that are just like, hey man, we're all inclusive, dog. Like it's it's a weird take to be like, we're vampires, so we're gonna murder you horrifically. But don't worry, once you're dead and an abomination, we're all pretty chill.
oh, and it's this Irish jig dancing vampire, and he really tries going into the comparisons of. Won't get too deep into this about how an external force, Christian Europeans, came in and affected the culture and it definitely affected the culture of slaves and left a lasting impact on it. And he tries making the vampire, this Irish vampire, Irish people were second class citizens for most of American history.
Yeah.
Tries making the comparison on the impact of both, but the problem is if you have an understanding of the history of both what happened in Ireland, what happened in Africa, it's not really a good comparison.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like, oh, I see what you're doing there. That's really misguided. And that's how that kind of struck me. It's like, I see what you were trying to do, you just didn't pull it off. But this idea of egalitarianism, equality through vampirism, again, you might be able to do something interesting there. It just doesn't work. I thought, oh, probably the Vampire Clan. That would make sense.
Yeah.
These terrible people who view others as subhumans are in fact preying on them. There's a group of them that are vampires. That strikes me as interesting. There were interesting ideas they just to do with vampires. They just didn't use them. One thing they bring up in this movie, the Voodoo Woman brings up a few times is haints, which is this thing from these spirits from Southern folklore who kind of terrorize people. Again, why not go with that?
Yeah.
Why not throw that in there along with bargains with the devil, demon possession, and maybe referencing the story, the famous story of Robert Johnson, who supposedly really made a deal with an evil entity at a crossroads for blues success. In which, by the way, I don't know if there's ever been a movie made about his story. That is a movie I want to see.
Yeah.
Ryan Coogler, who made this, please make that movie. That man, there is some, there's a lot of talent involved in this movie. It looks gorgeous for the most part. I think it could have been lit better. I know that is a nitpick. There's times it's too
Yeah.
dark. Which is kind of you don't see that much in movies anymore. But just the camera shots, the sets, the costumes look fantastic, and you have some talented actors in there. Why did they have to slap that? It felt the vampire stuff felt really tacked on in this.
It did. But I will say this for it though, when we finally, like I said, way too late in the movie, when we finally like cut loose on the vampire stuff and the gore and everything, it looks fantastic. But
But
it's just a long set to get to it for a movie that I was just like, okay, well, that we've got the snake out of the truck and we shot that guy in the butt, like, and we've got our groceries. Okay, now we gotta go get the. Okay, it was like side missions the movie until we get to
It,
the place.
it, I said this one's been difficult to break down because of there being so many aspects of it I really like.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't come together. It
Yeah.
doesn't really gel as a whole movie. I think we've got about three-quarters of a really good movie there. I and most of the great stuff doesn't involve vampires. Although I will say the gore is, man, excellent in
Mm.
this movie. Excellent gore.
And
Very well done.
and I think that this movie does have a lot of layers. Like I've just since watching it, I've seen on TikTok and on YouTube all these breakdowns of people like finding things, whether they're or not. Some of it's been confirmed by Kugler himself. Like each one of these characters represents one of the seven deadly sins, so that's why it's called sinners or this, that, the other. The stuff and out of that what folklore does tap into. Um, yeah, I think it's a great Southern Gothic siege movie that is kind of, I don't want to say ruined, but definitely let down by the supernatural element it decided to go with.
It did. It was a missed opportunity. That and we hit a point where so they're under siege by the vampires. Anybody who goes outside is getting slaughtered or turned. But there comes a point where the vampires are really let loose, and they're not nearly as much of a deadly, even though they're this overwhelming, powerful force. It's just so many of them dispatched just like henchmen. It just they're like okay. It doesn't come together in the end.
Yeah.
And then you have there's a scene with definitely a measure of satisfaction in it at the end towards a certain group of hooded white people who are awful. Um,
It be
and
it,
this
that
is
that that's a great scene, but again, because of the vampire stuff, when it does happen in the movie, that feels out of place because the vampire has shoehorned itself into this last third of the movie. To where if that was the build up for that, you would leave this theater cheering.
yes,
But
and I, you could honestly cut this movie together in such a way where it would leave out vampires, and which oddly enough, I truly believe that you could cut this movie in such a way it would feel choppy, but you could leave out the vampires and it would still make a measure of sense. It's strange.
yeah,
This is an odd one. I see the appeal and I see why so many people really like it. It's not a masterpiece. It really makes some mistakes in spots. And it's just and that's why I liked it okay,
mm,
but it was disappointing for what it really could have been.
yeah,
For the elements that were there. And there's some very human stories there about the smokestack twins and their romance and their love lives and the loss of a child, which I actually really like that aspect of the movie of a child who died and how deeply that affected
hmm,
one of the twins, um, and his relationship with his lover. And I really like their dynamic and their chemistry. Um, Maybe I'm just not used to seeing her in this regard. I really like Haley Steinfeld. I think she was a little out of place in this movie, and she
yeah,
seems to be like, I'm going to go for the. It's like I'm going to go for adult roles now. So she's like wants to say something really sexual and offensive. It's like it feels a bit forced.
yeah, and it's also weird to just be like, "Hey, what's that white woman? What's that white woman doing here?" Yeah,
It's
like you said, the twins are great. The characters that they do build up are interesting, but there are even the secondary, like the third secondary characters. Like there are people there that I want to know about. Like you said, the trackers or the relationship between the boy and the preacher. Like it feels like that's gonna be fleshed out. It's just I don't
Back,
know.
it's set the backstory with Cornbread, which is the
Yeah,
bouncer, and the story with his wife, and the Cornbread's background with the Smokestack twins. Again, they don't follow up on it.
yeah.
I, in a way, this movie's infuriating, and I watched it both in awe of what it does right, and just kind of like, wow, it really falls flat on its face with this vampire stuff,
Yeah.
and just straight up borrowing the scene from the thing.
Well, even that, and then of course, of the compare, a one for one comparison to From Dusk Till Dawn is not justified at all. If that's people's take from it, you're stupid. Sorry. But there is some. I do see a lot. The stuff with the brothers, and again, so much of this movie, like it leaned the marketing leaned so much into that, even to the point of spoiling. I want I want to say spoiling, but again, because it's so much of the build up to this juke joint, and then with the vampire scene here, there's one vampire scene, and then like 40 minutes go by, and then we have the vampires who are just like, "Hey, let me in. Oh, come on, let me in." No. Well, what if we sat out here and played Mumford and Sons? Would that be cool? um, Also, the like you said, the music, but the visual stuff. The scene I really liked. Um, Maybe because I like artsy fartsy stuff. Um, when he starts playing and like you start seeing musicians from the future who have kind of like took the blues to its next iterations, whether it was Bootsy Collins playing bass there next to him, and then the camera would pan around and you would see uh, hip hop and how much evolved from the Delta blues. I thought that was really cool.
That is the best scene in the movie. And it's like you watch it; it's a long tracking shot, and you see the roots from the blues from the distant past, from Africa, what is in the present, a little ways in the future, the
Yeah,
far future. Brilliantly done scene. I think it's wonderfully shot, and it is. That's why I just can't. It's like I can't. I'm not gonna. I can't totally trash this movie for the
no,
thing it does wrong. Man, the things it does right, it does really right. That scene is meaningful and beautifully shot and fantastic, and I think if you take away nothing else from this movie, you take away the impact culturally that music has had and and the roots of where it came from and where it's going, especially in Black culture. I, I think this movie drives that home so well, and how much meaning people have derived from it.
yeah,
And that part I love. The musical
yes,
aspect of this movie is extremely good.
yeah. I just like you said, it's not. There's so much of this movie that's fantastic, and I don't know if it was like just a way like horror's hot now. Let's make it a horror movie. Let's add this element to it. But man, it really gums up the works for what would be like just a really awesome.
It, it's it's not written well in spots. It doesn't come together. It's a movie that better in parts than as a whole. It very much that way. Um, I've enjoyed some of his previous work, and I mean, you can't watch this movie and see that he doesn't have talent.
Yeah,
Um, Ryan Coogler, that is.
yeah,
I really, I hope he kind of takes some things from this and takes some of his themes from this and manages to carry them over into some things in the future, to some future projects. I would like to see him revisit this time period or the time period around this and revisit especially music again and the impact it's had. Uh, I, that I really want to see. Make a Robert Johnson movie. Make just a straight up blues movie. Make a crime movie with blues. We were so man, he was close here,
Mm,
and it's disappointing.
yeah. But I mean, so much of it though does explain. To me explain why it's getting the praise it gets. It's just, it's just
Uh,
that thing.
98% on Rotten Tomatoes, and I, that's what I've read a lot of reviews for this movie, and I think it has some pretty glaring flaws, and I'm surprised people aren't calling it out more.
Yeah,
Um, but it said it's a hard movie to review because what it does well, but it does a lot wrong, which really undermines all the good.
yeah. So hopefully you stuck around this long and you won't nuke us in the comments. But again, a great movie that just has like just one big black eye on it that
It shouldn't
doesn't.
have been.
Yeah, it
No
shouldn't have been a
no
vampire movie.
vampires were needed in this movie at all. It is. It feels so incredibly tacked on. It pisses me off in retrospect.
Yeah,
Um, it it could have been better. This could have been a great movie. This could have been a contender without the vampires. Could have been contender for one of the best of the year.
yeah,
And as it stands, no.
yeah,
I'd say it's worth a watch. Temper expectations, especially in the vampire front.
yeah. And then like, also if for devil's advocate's sake, I guess I would say if you are going, everything you've said is right. However, if we are going to bend the knee to making this a vampire movie, then let's do it. Because as a
Yes,
vampire film, it fails horribly. Because
it's a blues movie that happens to have some vampires in
yeah,
it. It's That's why I say I struggle to actually call it a vampire movie,
yeah,
even though that's how it's sold.
yeah. But I think there's so much here. It's just you gotta watch it and kind of like just shut your brain off whenever the ghouls and goblins show up.
Yeah,
Especially that mid credit after credit scene was goofy.
I'll be honest, I didn't stick around for that. I heard about it afterwards. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's gonna wrap up our hot take review of the new hit Sinners. Next week will be our review. We're staying horror and we're staying controversial because uh, years ago I heard a wrestling promoter say controversy creates cash. And since we do this for free and we'll continue to do this for free, it's just more controversy. I'm reviewing from I almost said from dusk till dawn. No need, 5 stars. We're reviewing Until Dawn to see how it holds up. A, as a movie, because that's first and foremost the most important part. And secondly, as a video game adaptation, because let me tell you, buddy, it's not a great train to be on, but we will see how they do. Until then, and thank you, Nick, for being able to be here for this review. When we're able to get Nick on the YouTube reviews, it's always fun.
Yes, I hope
And
to do
again,
more in the future. I enjoy these collaborations, and hey, we we aligned on this one pretty much perfectly. I'm not
I,
surprised though about this.
with the way our horror movie takes usually go, that's why I kind of wanted you to go first because I was like, oh no, am I gonna be the one that really didn't like it this time?
Yeah, usually I'm the one that's more harsh, but I said I, I anybody who's watching this, let us know what you think. I'm interested in getting more takes on this because of the complexity of having to review it. Uh, yeah,
Yep,
but I enjoyed reviewing this, and I look forward to doing more of these in the future.
absolutely. So again, join us next week here on YouTube for Until Dawn. If you want to know why we were talking about this to begin with, go over to our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Movie-Club Emporium. And you can watch our live hangout where we talk about vampire movies and lots of other fun stuff. So, and then, because the YouTube demands it, make sure you like, subscribe, share with your friends. Let's get those subscriber numbers up. Maybe we can actually go, if we get enough of them, we could go live here on YouTube. Cut out that middleman, baby. And you can just watch us here whenever. But until then, I've been Jason.
And I'm Nick.
And we'll see you guys next time.
There
Bye.
you go. Thanks.